right, so I'm making a slow cooker stew today with the broth that I finished up yesterday. I'm gonna just trim and cut up these this eye of round from both legs. The recipe that I was looking at called for 2 pounds. This is probably like 1.5 pounds, maybe 2. But yeah, I'm gonna trim these up and we're gonna put them in a pan to fry them, and then we're gonna put it all in the crock pot. It's like early in the day. It's supposed to take 8 hours for this thing to cook, so I'm trying to get an early start. I learned from cutting it up that I need a better knife. I'm gonna use a fillet knife because my chef knife isn't that great for this, but ideally I'd get a knife that's more suited to the task. But we've got not a whole lot to trim off of this, but I think that from my understanding, I should get the silver skin off and some of the fat before I stew this. I'm not gonna worry about too much of it because I'm gonna be slow cooking it, but I wanna get enough off to where it doesn't affect the flavor of the stew.
So I'm gonna be honest with y'all, this did not go super well, and you're about to see, it was just rough. I spent some time sharpening the fillet knife beforehand, but I wish I had spent more time. I think even still, it just would have been rough. It's not the best tool for the job. Even the breaker knife that I have now isn't exactly for trimming. It just is the best thing that I've got, and I'm not really in a spot where I'm going to be buying 6 different knives for 6 different tasks.
I'm using the eye of round because I was planning on using it for jerky, but it just seemed like the perfect amount for the recipe that I'm working with. It's a tougher cut from what I read online. So I was planning on using it for a stew or a jerky or whatever. So that's what we're doing today. Okay, so I've got them trimmed up, and this is what we're looking at. Ooh. One of the things that I have trouble with, or like found I've been having trouble with, is like, how much do I cut off? And I think part of it is just kind of like, once you feel like you've got it to where it's not gonna taste bad, I think you just cut off as much as you want after that. These seem cleared off enough for me. There's still like a slight film over it, like a membrane, but I could be here for another hour trying to get all that off. So we're gonna chop these up into chunks now. Okay, so now I'm gonna mix together like 1/4 cup of flour, like a teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. To dredge the meat in, I have my cast iron heating, and I'm just gonna like sear it before I put it in the crock pot. While I'm waiting for the crock pot to heat up, I'm gonna dice up these potatoes real quick. Gonna sear these in butter. High heat oil might be better, but this is what I have. I'm gonna get it a little hotter. And while that is heating, I'm just gonna make sure these are good and coated. It's a little much. Might have been better if I had just kind of put them in one by one, but we're moving this morning because I got work to do. Probably could have let this heat up a little bit more, but these sides may not be super seared, but the other sides will be. So I'm searing this in batches, but what we've got here is, pretty fine for the pot. It's a little hard to get all 4 sides seared well just because they're not, it's not a square cut. But we're gonna put these in the crock pot and put the rest of the meat in here to sear. While I'm searing the meat, I'm just gonna chop up some cloves of garlic, 4 or 5. I don't think it needs to be super fine. I'm sure it'd be better that way, but we're just gonna get it as fine as I wanna get it and then toss it in.
we're also going to put some carrots, celery, and onion in the stew. I had chopped these up the night before so I could have some fresh pieces to put into my stock and not have to throw those in the trash. Don't make fun of my chopping technique. I can do it better than this, but this is where I was at the time of night I was doing this. So we got the meat in there. I'm gonna throw some garlic in first. 2 teaspoons of herbs de Provence, herbs de Provence. I've never used this stuff before. Put in another teaspoon of salt, half teaspoon of pepper. All right, so 8 hours later, things are smelling great. Things are looking great too. Let's see if we can find a little piece of meat. Yeah, there we go. Give it a go. Yeah. That's what I was hoping for. It's tender, just like how I wanted the stew meat to be. I maybe, would be down for it to just like really fall apart, but at the same time, it's nice that it keeps its form. I think if it were any more tender, I'd try to pick it up and it would just fall. And it's kind of nice to have chunks of meat in the stew rather than just like kind of strands. But it tastes awesome as well. I was a little worried that my broth might mess it up, just because there was a little bit of a bitter aroma to the broth. But it's just, yeah, I'm just real psyched. I'm real psyched to put this in a bowl and eat some dinner. Now I'm actually gonna eat some of the stew. It smells really nice. I'm really excited. I'm also really hungry. I tried some of the meat earlier. It was good. Now we're gonna give the whole thing a try. That was good. I was planning on putting some mushrooms in here, and I forgot. But I'd say I don't think I could have fit more vegetables, unless I just chopped less. But it seemed like a lot less before I actually put it in. But yeah, this is great. The meat's falling apart. I think I could have even left it in for another hour, and it would have been even more tender. But I feel like this is great. No nuts. Yeah, and I was a little bit worried when I had first, finished the stock that I made that it was gonna make things taste bitter. But this is phenomenal. I know probably how this would. I feel like in my mind I have an idea of how this would have tasted differently had I just used beef stock. And I'm really glad that I used my venison stock. Not just for kind of like the sentimental value, but it just tastes awesome. Got a little garlic bread to go along with it. I would say with some bread, this recipe, what I did, following the directions I followed, feed like 4 to 6 people, honestly. You throw another side in there in addition to the bread, definitely 6. Easily 4. I have round, great cut for stews. Really psyched on it. I'm probably gonna make some jerky next. But we'll see if I end up cooking something else. I've got some squirrels in the freezer that I need to cook. So I'll probably do that before I pull more of the deer out for like an actual dinner. But for right now, think jerky next week or the week after. Like it, the video, subscribe, leave a comment if you got a question or have a way that you cook stew that you want to share. I'm all in on stew recipes after this, so feel free to share. And at the end of the day, I think a stew is a really good way to cook wild game if you're nervous about it, because like it's hard to like undercook or overcook the stew. Well, I mean, you can undercook it, but it's just like a good approach. You put a lot of spices in, and so a lot of the time if you didn't trim your meat up enough, or maybe it's like a little off flavor, there's a lot of different things that can mask that, and you can really make anything taste good if you cook it like this. So
stews are a great option. We'll do some things that are a little bit more difficult later on, but I think this is a great one to start with. And yeah, subscribe, follow the playlist that I'm making if you want to see me use more of this deer.